I want you to be in a position of power because you are powerful. And I think that's the problem with letting people have access to us, is that we start to almost feel powerless. It's like, I can't say no. You know, this person always knocks my door and I feel like I have to open the door and let them in. You do not need to give everyone access to you, your home, your information, and your peace of mind. Hey there, gorgeous, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back, my gorgeous babe. So today we're going into the topic of giving people access to you. What I mean by this is, if you have ever been in a situation where you realize that every time a particular person or individuals come into your space, come into your personal space, maybe interact with you on the phone, if you have come to a point where you notice that every time you have an interaction with them, it never ends well, or you end up feeling very heavy, they end up maybe trauma dumping on you, or you just feel like that interaction had no benefit whatsoever and it was just a waste of time, then this video is for you. Because I have personally been there many times, not knowing how to set boundaries, not knowing how to say no, not knowing how to limit that person's access to me, and that cost me a lot of time, a lot of energy. It became draining, and honestly, with certain individuals, I felt like I started to get PTSD every time the phone would ring, and I'm like, oh my god, it's them again. Or I know that I'll have to meet them at a gathering or a social event, and I'm just like, I don't even know if I can do it, because I knew that I hadn't laid the strong foundation and the boundaries to make this person know that this is the limit. I'm here, you're here, don't cross this, right? So if you have been in that situation yourself, then this is a video that hopefully will give you some nuggets that could be helpful going forward, okay? Because your access is expensive, and honey, you should add some tax on top of that too, okay? So let's get straight onto this video. So I think you and I can both agree that trying to manage a healthy relationship, as it is, be it with friends, family, colleagues, or what have you, is already as tricky as it is, because we all come with our own opinions, our own values, our own cultural beliefs, whatever it might be. So that already is quite tricky, and you're trying to navigate that and trying to show up as the best version of yourself, okay? That's fine. But now, if you add the mix of somebody who's quite draining, who's quite toxic, who's quite negative, and who honestly is super pessimistic, and when they come into your sphere, all they do is leave things upside down. So sometimes some people actually just trauma dump, leave you thinking about them and all their disasters, and you don't even have the capacity to even think about yourself or process things for your life. If life is already tricky as it is, why are we allowing people to come in and make it worse? Granted, there's some situations where you cannot avoid those toxic people, especially when they are family or when they're your spouse, and you then, start to see a different side to them that you never saw before. This can happen. But the question is, how do we navigate these relationships? And better yet, how do we see life in a different lens from what we've been doing? Because up to now, I'm assuming you, much like myself, have been allowing people to overstep the boundaries. You've been allowing people to keep breaking the promises that you even made to yourself. So you made a promise to say, I'm not going to speak to this person past a certain time, because every time I speak to them, I'm not even able to go to bed because my mind is racing thinking about what they've just said to me. Maybe you've even broken promises to yourself just to facilitate this individual. And people who tend to be almost like leeches, like energy leeches, right? Or energy vampires, as we call them, right? They sometimes almost have a radar for people who are willing to listen to their mess. I said it. They have a radar for people who are good listeners, and people who are empathetic, and people who are compassionate, and honestly, they are attracted to you like a moth to flame. Just saying. So how do we really handle this, right? We're managing healthy relationships, and yes, we're navigating that, and it's difficult, but we're managing that. But then there's these other people over here that really and truly should have zero access to us. How do we manage them and do it in a way that is still compassionate, still empathetic, but most importantly, there's a level of selfishness you do need to exercise in order for you to go back to being selfless to the right people. And I think that's going to be my term, because I've said it in a few videos now. So let's get straight into it. Number one, we need to start knowing how to set boundaries. We need to start knowing how to set boundaries. And when we hear this word setting boundaries, initially it's like, oh yeah, I can do that. I set boundaries every day. But when put to the test, do your boundaries, do they stand the test? Do they? Right? And like I just mentioned now, if somebody calls you that you genuinely have no business talking to, and you know every time you speak to them, there isn't anything that comes of it, are you able to leave that phone to ring out? Are you able to avoid responding back to the text instantly because that's what you normally do? Your muscle memory tells you pick up the phone and speak to them for an hour, maybe two, right? That's your valuable time that you've wasted, that you gain nothing from. You know, that's what your muscle memory is telling you to do, because that's what you're used to doing. Are you going to text them back and forth and have a marathon of texts that are going to essentially lead nowhere? Are you able to stop yourself from doing that? Setting your boundaries, writing them on paper, or setting them mentally is the easy part. But following through with the boundaries you've set, that's the hard part. And I think the trick that eventually helped me is by narrating it to yourself and saying, by setting these boundaries, I am protecting my peace. Because I think you need to put some weight on those boundaries in order for them to really stick, and in order for you to even be more assertive with your boundaries. You know, I'm putting these boundaries in place to protect my peace. I am putting these boundaries in place because I love and like myself. Now that may be difficult because liking and loving ourselves is a challenge, and a constant challenge for some of us, right? And we're going to talk about that in a different video. But I am putting these boundaries in place because I like and love myself, okay? And I'm entitled to like and love myself. Thank you very much, yeah? And I am setting these boundaries in place because I value those who value me. I did not say I value those who I value, although they don't value me. I said, I value those who value me because I value me too. But if you have somebody who does not value you, your time, your peace of mind, your mental health, then those boundaries will not stick. So these are the things that we need to think about when we're talking about setting boundaries. Do you love yourself enough to set that boundary and to stick to it? Do you cherish your time and your energy so much so that you will protect it, right? You need to really think about this. And that's why I think if you broke it down to those 3 segments when you're setting your boundary, you will start to interact with it a lot better than you do when you just almost mechanically say I'm setting a boundary. When you walk away or turn off this video, I want you to be in a position of power because you are powerful. And I think that's the problem with letting people have access to us, is that we start to almost feel powerless. It's like, I can't say no. This person always knocks my door and I feel like I have to open the door and let them in. You do not need to give everyone access to you, your home, your information, and your peace of mind. You don't have to. And you're not required to, you're not obligated to. And the minute you feel like you're obligated to give people access to you in all those different avenues is when you lose your power. So I'm here to remind you that you are a powerful being, that you can take steps to set boundaries because you like yourself, because you love yourself, because you want to protect your peace. And when you do that, you will come out on top because you will start attracting people who also value you and people who want to pour into you. And initially, it sounds like something that is a little bit too simplistic, but once you practice it over and over again and reinforce those boundaries to a point where they become as strong as titanium, that whoever tries to cross those boundaries, they will feel it because they will see your attitude change towards them, and not negatively, but you'll be very firm and you will tell them, listen, these are the boundaries that I've set for myself for my peace of mind. And I do not respect people who step over my boundaries because I've set them in place for my peace of mind. So if you don't value and respect my peace of mind, then we cannot have a conversation, right? And people will value you more when you value your space, value your mental health, and also value your time. Simple. And the second thing that is very closely linked to setting boundaries is limiting your interactions. This goes back to valuing your time. Limit your interactions. And I will not really labor this point because it is what it says. If you're somebody who's in all of the social gatherings, anywhere you get invited, you never say no, you're going because you're a people pleaser and you're in your people pleasing era, or you have your people pleasing tendencies, and you're constantly showing up and showing out for people, people will not respect you, and therefore will not respect how much access that you're giving them, right? And you even find that some people get to a point, they're like, don't you have other plans? You're always available, right? And listen, gorgeous people, do not get to a point where you're predictable. Do not. It's like if I ask her, or if I ask her or I invite her to something, I know that she'll be available. Please respect yourself, respect your time, respect your energy. It's not everything that people invite you to that you go to, because sometimes you will end up meeting the same people in all of these different places, and there's no air of mystery about you. You're just an open book. Everyone knows everything about you. And this is part of limiting access to you. It's that people see you every once in a while. It's okay. You do not have to be almost like a piece of furniture in all of these events. Respect yourself and respect your time. And by doing that, you limit the access that you're giving people. Therefore, what that does is it creates an air of respect about you and your time. Now, this one may be a little bit hard for you if you're somebody who likes to overshare your personal information. But one thing I will say is when you're trying to limit people's access to you, and that's family, friends, colleagues, whoever it might be, please be selective about the information that you share, especially and particularly when it's private and sensitive information that could be held against you at some point. There's some people that I've met in life, and my goodness, I do not know how they've gotten this far in life. And this is not criticism, it's not judgment. I genuinely just do not understand. Within a second or two of meeting them, I know everything that there could be to know about them. I know where they were born, I know about their spouse, I know about the disagreements they have with their spouse, I know how much they hate their work, I know this, I know that. And luckily for me, I hear that information, and the minute I leave that person, I've come to a point where I've mastered how to detach myself from that person and their information, right? But if that information landed in the wrong hands, that could be crafted against them. And when you find yourself in a position where you're constantly oversharing your information, and then you now act shocked, perplexed, gobsmacked, that people are talking about your life, whether that's your financial, whether that's your accommodation, whether that's your relationship, whether that's your work situation, you're then acting shocked when people are talking about it, when you were the one that went out there and freely gave away the information. I am not here to point fingers, but what I am saying is let's take accountability. Do not, and I pray that you take this in the nicest way, you cannot be in a position where you're upset about somebody oversharing your information when the information came from your mouth. Now, if you had shared that information with a trusted party that then went ahead and told somebody else, you're within your rights to be upset. But being selective about who you share your information with is the first point of call for protecting your peace and your mental health. Because there's some people that do not have the best interests at heart for you, regardless of how much you'd like it to be the case. And I've got a video up here, or I'll put it in the link below, where I talk about envious people and how you can tell people are envious about you. It's not everyone that likes you just because you like them, or they love you just because you love them. So be selective about the information that you share and who you share it to. Better yet, take a journal, write it down. If you need to be coded about it, be coded about it. So if it does get discovered at some point, it will not be held against you. But all I can say is there are other means to share your information if you feel like you need to talk. If it's not a trusted friend, it's your journal, it's your voice notes, it's your therapist that is paid to keep your information under wraps, okay? Just saying. And if all those fail, the first point of call should have really been God. Pray, speak to God, go into prayer, something. Just do not overshare, okay? So another way to limit access or limit people's access to you is that if and when you are faced by a situation where you do have to interact with people that you may not typically interact with, the best way to deal with this, honestly, is just by staying calm. Stay calm, deal with them, speak to them, practice active listening interact with them, but make sure that you do not get too invested in the conversation and you remain detached. Because what that will do is, if you do have somebody who is kind of a person who's susceptible to kind of like verbal diarrhea and just talking, and they don't necessarily care about the person that's listening, what that will do is that as they see you staying calm and detached from a conversation, it may actually deter them from oversharing, because they start to notice that you're not really feeding into what they're saying. And this is a very good way to kind of keep away those energy vampires at the same time, because it's like, oh no, this person is practicing active listening, but the way they're calm and acting detached from me, I don't really feel like I can get that energy that I want from them. Because some of these people, they speak to you and they tell you the things that they tell you because you almost act as a sponge. You act as if you are a sponge, kind of like absorbing all their information, because at that point you're attached, and they like that because it feels like somebody is listening to them. First of all, my gorgeous friend, let me tell you this. We are not here to play free therapist. Therapists are there for a reason. Psychologists and what have you are there for a reason. That service is available to those who are able to pay for it. You are not in the game of playing therapist or psychologist or any of those things. So do not fool yourself into a false sense of security and superiority by being that person that everyone goes to. This can happen to the best of us. When you feel like, oh my goodness, I always have those friends that come to me. I'm that friend that people go to when they need to figure life out, that they need advice and they need this and they need that. First of all, there is no medal for participating in free therapy. If anything, the reward that you get is unnecessary stress, unnecessary trauma being dumped on you, and also exhaustion from things that have nothing to do with you. So all I'm saying is there is no reward for being that person that everyone goes to dump all their nonsense onto, only for you to be left deflated and feeling depleted as well. And then they come back to you after, they circle back after a few weeks and they're like, oh, remember that thing that you gave me advice on? Well, I'm still doing that and it's worse now. And you look at yourself and you're thinking, why did I just waste an hour, 2, 3, even a few days or a weekend listening to your woes only for you to go back and do the same thing? But this is why I'm saying you need to be detached from people's situations, because I know for a fact that when I was a lot younger and I was that kind of person that was very quick to give a listening ear, and by nature I'm a very attentive listener and somebody who's very compassionate and empathetic. That is a great characteristic to have, but to people who do not know how to value it, it can actually be devalued. And if you do not know how to set your boundaries, by being so attached and not being able to pull yourself away from that particular scenario, you can then start to carry someone else's burdens that were not yours to begin with. So this is why I'm saying stay detached from those conversations, and in doing that you actually limit the access, because they're not able to pour into you because you are not ready to absorb the mess. Do you see how that works? And that leads me on to the next way to limit access to your energy and to you, right? And to stop giving people access to you. Reevaluate your relationships. Really reevaluate them. I kind of alluded to that in some parts of what I said earlier, but reevaluate your relationships. Look at the relationships you have and which ones actually pour into you. Which ones help you feel like you're becoming a better version of yourself? Which relationships do you walk away from? Like when you have those interactions with that individual, when you walk away from them, how do you feel? That's how you start evaluating it. Sometimes it's not what someone says, and it's not how it looks on paper, and it's not how we look good in pictures. Like, yeah, on Insta pictures, we look really good on, we look good together as friends, or, in a relationship, whatever it might be. But off the paper, away from the theory, how do I feel when I walk away from you? That's a good way to measure and reevaluate your relationships. Do I feel as though our interaction was equally yoked? That I gave as much as you gave? And even in situations, because life is not always equally yoked, especially in friendships and in relationships. That sometimes I might be low, somebody else will be high, and they might be low and I might be high in terms of like energy and how life is flowing. But even in my low times, how did I feel you poured into me? Did I feel that you saw me for who I was? Did I feel that you filled me up even when I was at my lowest? Did you see me when I was at my lowest? Or did you look down on me and say, well, you're always giving me advice, now is your time to suffer? Because there are people who will do that. Oh, your life is always so good. It's a shame that this is happening to you. And they will add nothing to you. They will not kind of catch you when you fall. They will not cushion your fall, but better yet, they'll pull the cushion from right under you and watch you fall and say, well, it's time for you to experience that. Evaluate your relationships, because when you're in a position where you're always given and constantly given, it's very easy to forget that you're also in a position to receive. So this is where you need to practice the act of being open to receiving, being open to also getting the positive interactions and the love and the energy come in your direction and not always going away from you. You can't always be giving, because you'll eventually be depleted. And when you're depleted, who's really there to fill you up? Reevaluate your relationships, because this could make or break the future relationships that you have. Because once you settle for something now, that sets the blueprint to how other people will see you and interact with you. And this is why you need to limit the access that you give people, because it's not everyone that comes around you, again, that is for you. But how will you know they're not for you if you're not evaluating a relationship? And this is why it's important to evaluate the relationships as soon as you can, or as soon as you get a warning sign somewhere down the line. Okay? Now, I know that some of these things may sound relatively easy, but they may take a lot of effort from you to be able to actually execute them and to make sure that you uphold your word to yourself. Not all of us are very good at keeping promises to ourselves, or even being able to put some of these things into practice. And this is where I would say, if you are unable to set boundaries in order to limit people's access to you so that you can have a more peaceful and wholesome life, then I highly, highly recommend getting some professional help, because sometimes the issues that we face are beyond self-help. We need help from outside. And it's okay to hold your hand up and say, I need help. I need assistance. I need some sort of structure from an external person or from an external entity that kind of has oversight over my life, and they can help me to see how to best manage things, right? And it's okay to do that. Honestly, I repeat that again, it's okay. I feel like, sadly, some of us as ladies, we've been put in this position where we're nurturers and we care for people and we're empathetic. And instead of it working to our benefit within the community, in the wrong hands, our nurturing and caring and empathetic nature can be taken for granted and actually abused. So if you've gotten to the point where you no longer know the lines, and the lines are blurred between people having access to you because you've allowed them to, and them forcing themselves to have access to your space because they feel entitled to it, if you're unable to distinguish that, it's okay to ask for help outside of yourself. Because as long as you are in a position where you feel like you have a level of control in your life, you will feel better about yourself. But every time you feel like you're in a position where you do not have control, and granted, we don't always have 100% control in our lives, but at least being able to control the basic elements such as your time, your energy, your peace of mind, your mental health, those are the basic things you should be able to control. If you're unable to do that, then maybe it's time to call in some reinforcement to help you to do that. So all in all, every single thing that I have stated so far has been to benefit you in the long run and to protect your energy. And if you don't necessarily resonate with the term energy, it's to protect your peace of mind, to protect your levels of stress, and better yet, to lower your levels of stress, because you're not constantly having to come up against people who don't necessarily know how to manage themselves around you. But also, it just means that you're able to control all of the factors that come into your space as much as possible, and setting the boundaries, limiting interactions, and also knowing how much information to share. All of those things tie in together to give you back the space that you need to process things for you and for your life. And the problem with not knowing how to limit access is that your life takes a back seat. And if you've waited until this point in the video, I know that you want to know how to set the boundaries and to give yourself back that space that you've been loaning out freely, essentially, right? So I want you to understand that every single thing that we're doing so far in this video is to allow you to thrive as an individual, because the more energy you conserve for yourself, you are able to actually use that energy to not only build yourself, your self-esteem and your confidence, and also your belief in yourself and the relationship with yourself, which I'll touch on in a different video, because rebuilding a relationship with yourself is absolutely key to being able to even learn how to limit access to people who are unworthy of your access, right? And the reason why we do all of this is because in the long run, you will be able to start seeing the relationships that are good for you, the friendships that are healthy for you, and you can then insert yourself in their environment just as they insert themselves in yours, because it will be equally beneficial, right? As opposed to it being unequally yoked where people are coming to you, like I said, trauma dumping, getting your stress levels through the roof just by seeing them, just by seeing phone calls coming in, just by seeing their emails in your inboxes. You do not want to be in that predicament, because that means you've given up your power to somebody else and they are running your life without you having a say. So what I want you to take away from this is your time, your energy, your conversation, your opinions, all of these things have to be earned, right? I want you to get to a position where you value who you are, so much so that nobody can take you for a runaround. Nobody can take you for a fool and waste your time just because they're used to things being the way they always have been, and you always being the way you always have been, by giving up your time freely, not really considering what you need to prioritize, what you need to do for yourself. So take this as a sign to prioritize yourself. Create that boundary for yourself so you can have peace, so you can recharge, so you can fill yourself up, and then pour yourself out to the right deserving people, because it's not everyone that you encounter, that you call friend, that you call spouse, that you call colleague, that needs and should have your space, your energy, and your time. Okay, so I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments below what you will be doing to restrict the access that you give people who have not been deserving of it so far. And if you think this video will be beneficial for somebody else, do not forget to share it with them. And as always, stay tuned for more amazing videos, and I'll post some that I think you love up here somewhere. Until next time, my gorgeous babes, bye bye.